welcome back. I am so grateful to have all of you here. Welcome to the NeuroTribe. Today, I have an interview with Marilyn. Marilyn, thank you so much for coming on today. Marilyn is a very successful businesswoman, a mompreneur. When we started coaching years ago, she came to me and had quite a layout of goals. It's really been quite beautiful to see the growth that I have seen in Marilyn. And I wanted to bring her on today so we can kind of talk about her journey and where she has gone. I'm really grateful to have her on. Marilyn?
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's always so much fun to do some cool projects with you. This is an honor. Thank you.
Marilyn, I'm just wondering, can you kind of tell me what life was like before you started coaching and kind of where you were at in life?
Yeah, for sure. So, I had just kind of rolled into a little bit different position in my mortgage career at the time. And I was making some pretty scary moves going from, having a regular paycheck, in a salaried position to a straight commission position. And, there was a lot of interesting things going on in my life. And I just felt like I needed to tackle some areas and learn how to gain some confidence. I was kind of jumping into a big pond with some big fish, and I'm primarily, male, and especially in, the finance world. And now, I'm gonna go swim with big fish. And I I had like massive imposter syndrome. And I also felt like I needed to get a grip on just some emotional processing because at the time, I was in a relationship. I wanted to hopefully take that relationship to another level, and I just felt like maybe wasn't equipped enough with my thought process to, do some of these things, these big things that I was starting to do, and I wanted to really figure out, okay, what am I doing wrong? And I guess that was the initial approach as I came to you with, okay, this is wrong with me. This is wrong with me. And I believed all of that to be true, that I had faulty thinking and I couldn't figure out how to decipher truth from reality. So
Mm.
that's what brought me your way.
Yes, I remember you describing yourself as so intense, you're almost crazy, and people have a hard time being around your intensity. And your partner at the time was like, I love you. I want to move forward, but until we do, we need to figure out like this anxiety piece.
Yeah. And anxiety can manifest in many ways. And for me, it was, anxiety manifested in high energy perfectionism, OCD, and obsessive thinking like, okay, how do I get ahead of this problem before it becomes a problem? And, it was just an anxious energy that I knew my kids could feel for sure. It was like, oh, mom's edgy. And I just didn't want to be like that anymore. And I couldn't quite figure out like, where is this all coming from?
Let me ask you this. What made you decide to work with me?
Well, first of all, we connected through a mutual networking group. And at the time, you were doing different coaching parameters. And one of them actually was relationships with food. And I'd always
Mhm.
had a very love hate relationship with food, from binging to not eating. And I wanted to get a grip on that, figure out, why do I do these things? I was really into chocolate and wine at the time, and I couldn't seem to break past that loop of chocolate and wine, chocolate and wine. So initially, when I met up with you, it was like, okay, I think I need to get a grip on my nutrition. Then it was from that conversation, because I was like, I need to lose some weight and da da da. And you were like, you don't need a diet plan. You need a coaching plan. And I didn't quite understand that the correlation with food, relationships, and money, and how I interacted with people through my high anxiety, like it was all intertwined. And I didn't see that there was a definition between all of these areas. And I heard this great quote the other day that said, how you do anything is how you do everything. And when I took a step back and realized it's not the relationship with food, it's a relationship with myself that
Mhm.
needs to change. And that's really when I started grabbing a shovel and digging into the dirt and seeing just how far I could go.
And so the first year that we worked together, there was a lot of goals that you had and that you not only hit, but you surpassed with higher or your expectations were like, I cannot even believe that we've hit this and hit this and hit this. And we kept making new and new and new goal. So you can share whatever you want to share, but there were some really big highlights to the first year of you and I working together. Do you want to share any of them?
Yeah, for sure. So once I realized that I could start to really pick and choose how I responded to the thoughts that ruminated in my brain, it really changed how I looked at a lot of things, which obviously filters out to every area of your life. I think the biggest thing that people fail to see is we're only in one relationship our entire lives, and that's a relationship with ourselves. And so once I started to really dive into some of the lies that I believed were truths, everything started to change. Within that first year, I ended up increasing my business 422%, which was wild. It was one of the biggest increases in purchase volume in my area that I was in. And I was just like, holy cow, this is great. I also just really changed my relationship that I had at the time with my now husband. And we ended up getting married throughout all of this time. My kids' relationship changed. I learned how to gear down and kind of refocus my priorities in life. And through it all, it allowed me to actually get out of my 21-year career in mortgage. I needed to prioritize money over what my true priorities were. And yes, we do need money to survive and to retire comfortably and things like that. But I was able to retire from my mortgage career and figure out, okay, what do I want to do? And in a sense, because of the work that I did, everything changed, and it was scary change at the time, but it was all positive at the end.
Yeah. You know what's so interesting? We've had this conversation more than one time, and it's when you start to do your work and you start to really work through your own stuff, you get to this place where you start thinking, I don't know if the people around me genuinely have my best interest. And then it's almost like it's not like you're growing out of the people, but you reach this loneliness because you realize that some of your old unhealthy healthy patterns are going on in your relationships.
Yeah.
And so it's not that you've become better than these other people. It's just that they haven't done that work also. And so your time becomes more valuable to you. And so you really are more intentional with who you spend your time with. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience and how you kind of went through? I remember talking to you one time. You're like, no, I feel like I'm going through the muck right now. It's like I'm growing so much and there's so many wonderful things happening. But at the same time, there's also this deep, heavy loneliness that I'm feeling. So could you want to talk a little bit about that? And then also, since you're now on the other side of that, what is it like for you now finding your true, genuine people?
Man. Yeah, that is a great point. And I think this is also something that, you know, they don't like to talk about whether you're getting healthy and, away from an addiction or changing your mentality or creating boundaries. There is a phase of loneliness, and it is just like when you go through a mourning process. At first you're like, heightened emotion, right? You could be heightened sadness. It could be heightened excitement, because of the changes. And then there's this valley where it is like, oh my gosh, you realize a lot of the friendships and bonds that you created with people were based around the person you were. And whether that's, for me, every area changed. I used to love to drink, and especially at night. And that really, I had built lots of friendships around alcohol. And when
Mhm.
I stopped doing that, a lot of those friendships just kind of drifted away because that wasn't our
Mhm.
connection. And other people were still at that spot. And that's okay. It just wasn't my scene anymore. I evolved past that to something else. I had a lot of bonds with people that were based on workaholism. And when I stopped doing that, those things went away. Boundaries, that was a huge thing. When I started to put
Mhm.
boundaries in place, some were close friends, some were family. It was difficult because I realized when you're on the way up and you're changing and good things are happening to you, there's always the team that's rooting for you, like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And there's a team that wants to pull you down and remember where you came from. Remember all the
Mhm.
mistakes you made. We want to remind you that you're still that person. I think what happens subconsciously with other people that see you changing and evolving is it shines a light on the areas that they know they need to work on as well, but they're just not in a place to work on them. They're not sure how to get to the next level and grow past it. You're growing past it, and it can be painful, but
Mhm.
what I've discovered is going back to only being in one relationship with one person, which is myself, the rest of my life, I've had to learn to become my own best friend. And instead
Mhm.
of becoming my own worst critic, I've had to really go, you know what? It's okay. It's okay that these people are kind of fallen away. And it doesn't mean you have to, demonize them and put them in as, these are God people, these are good people. It's just everybody has good and bad. Everybody
Mhm.
human. And you can still love people and not like the behavior. One thing that I've really embraced over the last few years is to protect my dignity at all costs. And
Yeah.
it's not so others can go, oh, and others have an opinion. Everybody's going to have an opinion about you.
I
Some
mean,
people are going to think you're amazing, and some people are going to think you're not so hot. And it's what you think about yourself that really matters. And are you operating with integrity? Are you showing love? Are you being a kind person so that way you're leaving a legacy where others are inspired to change as well? you
mhm.
know and that's just kind of what I've had to sit with is there has been some lonely times and lonely periods, but at the end of the day I can't continue to go back to old ways. Once you know better, you do better.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to be a neurodivergent business owner and some of your strengths? And on the flip side, some of the challenges that you face as a neurodivergent individual that is a very successful business owner. And then on the kind of back end of that question, if you could have any types of supports that you would think would be helpful for you.
So strength wise, the neurodivergency that I have is really good for details. If there's a project, I know all the steps that it's going to take to get to that project, and I'm able to work backwards and set up some good organizational systems. I'm also pretty good at reading people and understanding what the real issue is, even though it might be manifesting and coming out as anger. Really, they're afraid of losing their job or they're afraid that they look incompetent. It's helped me have that empathy and really pull out, okay, what's really bothering you? In being empathetic, I've also learned that I don't have to absorb all of their sadness and emotions. I can simply just dig in, figure out what the problem is, and help them realize that and talk through it as well. The negative of that is I could still tend to be a perfectionist. And when certain areas of the plan and the steps that I put into place aren't being executed by other people that I depend on, I can kind of get a little like frustrated. And I have to learn to control what I can control and let go what I can let go.
Mhm.
80% of the results come from 20% of work that you put into things. It's just doing the right actions at the right time that are really going to move the needle. You've got to
Mhm.
learn not do some things completely perfect. And that's hard for me 'cause it repeats in my head again, how you do anything is how you do everything. So to not give something 100%, I feel like I'm selling myself short. And so I'm trying to really learn, okay, what's really going to move the needle and what should I really focus on versus focusing on perfection. I think as far as tools that are helpful, I start my day off by listening to some sort of inspirational, motivational communication specialist, something that I can have some food for thought to go into my day. I don't have a lot of
Mhm.
time to sit down and like undivided attention and watch a podcast or a YouTube video. So I'll play it as I'm getting ready for my day. And it gives me a lot of time to just think about this situation I just went through yesterday. This totally applies. And here's how I could handle this better. We're always looking for ways to handle these better. I think hiring a coach, for those that are still kind of trying to figure out life, I think that's number one. We spend a lot of money on business seminars, but there's never any introspection. And it's really scary when you start to look at an area of your life and go, okay, I need to get to the root of that. Because, like
Mhm.
I said earlier, you're grabbing a shovel and you're breaking ground. You don't
Mhm.
necessarily know how far down you're going to have to dig. And once you get
Mhm.
to the layer and you reach the hidden city of Atlantis, there's another city that's buried under Atlantis. So
Mhm.
gear up, get a different tool, because now you're going to drill down 1,000 more feet to figure out what's going on in that city. And so
Yeah.
coaching and self-development, this is not just I went to 5 counseling sessions, I'm totally good now. Yeah, you might have overcame that particular aspect, but trust me, there's a lot more. So people that get into this journey of evolving, just know it's a lifelong journey. Sometimes you're
Mhm.
coasting, sometimes you're in a sports car and you're flying around the corners,
Mhm.
and sometimes you're pushing a broken down Datsun up a hill.
Yeah, right? Oh my gosh, that's so true. So tell me what it's like for you because you're a neurodivergent individual. You're running a business. Your partner is a neurodivergent individual and you have neurodivergent children. So, can you kind of tell me what it is like to be an entrepreneur, business owner, ND, having ND kids and an ND partner? Can you kind of like, of course, you don't want to tell all of the personal details, but can you kind of share a little bit of your experience with that balance?
Yeah. So I think it is when you are neurodiverse and you surrounded by other neurodiverse people, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is self-regulation and self-check. And so again, going back to my perfectionist tendencies, I can tend to get frustrated and irritated. My husband's neurodiversity is he can be disconnected and aloof. And so I have to learn to not take some of that behavior as personal or get frustrated, like, why is that not obvious? And so I have this litmus test for myself. You have to use it on a regular basis. I'm not always 100% successful when I use it, but I try to use it as much as possible so I don't come across as snippy or irritated. But if I find that I have 3 negative thoughts in a pretty short amount of time, then I know right there that the problem is me. That
Mm,
I'm looking at the world and I'm looking at things through a different lens that is it's my skewed perception. And so I try to do that self-check and regulation on a regular basis so that I don't say something or act in a way that is hurtful to somebody else. Because we can hurt people and say, I'm sorry. But once you say the words or do the actions, it sends a clear message of how you really feel.
mm.
So I really try to be mindful of my words and actions. I
Yeah.
I think also realizing that everybody's got their own struggles and trying to assess, okay, this person's behavior or their tendencies are XYZ to do these, do this. Instead of saying, when you do this, you make me feel. It's nobody can make you feel or do anything, but the words or the actions can make you feel inside it a certain way. Oh, that doesn't feel right to me. And whether that's right or wrong in that person's perspective is irrelevant, because it's how I'm, the energy I'm absorbing. And so you can say anything to anyone as long as you word it correctly and it's said in love. I have to sit down sometimes with my husband and be like, hey, and don't ever do it in the moment because you can never deliver a message without emotion when it is cranked up to 10. So
Mhm.
I always wait. I think things through, and then I wait until there's a diffused time to bring that situation up. And I have to be prepared that he can take it however he wants, but at least I got it out and I didn't bottle it up. And maybe it gave him some food for thought for future interactions, like, oh, she doesn't really care for it if I act like this or whatever. Now he's going to do and say whatever he wants to do because we all have free will. We can do that. People always say, you can't talk to me like that. Yeah, they can. And they do. But you teach them how to interact with you.
Mhm.
We have no control over what someone says or does. It's just,
Mhm.
how am I going to respond to that? And if you're going to continue that pattern of behavior, then we can't interact together.
Yeah, and you find that's you exploring your boundaries, right?
Right. And so, I try to look at things within my family dynamics of I'm not there to teach people a lesson or be rude about anything. If anything, I'm there to observe and help when I can, speak up for myself if I need to, and accept that nobody's perfect, even though I
Mhm.
might think, I'm nothing wrong with me. I'm totally fine. I'm cool. Newsflash, you're human. And you're gonna do annoying things. So I think just giving everyone some grace, including yourself, is really how I try to manage all of the
Good.
diversity in my sphere.
One of the things that we've worked quite a bit on is being a business owner and a mom, and that juggle between getting all of the work done and also showing up as the mom that you want to be. And we have come so far on that journey together that I really feel like it's been such a beautiful thing to be able to watch and witness, right?
Mhm.
So can you tell me a little bit about what it was like when you very first started working with me versus, 4 years later, and what it's like, wow, between your work relationship with yourself, your work relationship with your kids, and your relationship with your kid.
Mhm. I think for me, I'm really trying to remember the whole, is this going to matter in a year from now? Is this going to matter in 5 years from now? I try to take into consideration, from the time our kids are born until they, are off on their own. You have about 18 Christmases, 18 birthdays, 18 years, an event, 18 times that events are going to take place. And, you know, work's not going to love you. Work isn't going to give a crap that you missed this important event or that you couldn't go and on a vacation because you just had to get more loans closed, or, you had to make sure this client was taken care of. And I get the whole customer service aspect of things, especially in competitive businesses like insurance and real estate and things like that. I understand that. But at the end of the day, I've had to put some things into perspective, and, nobody on their deathbed has ever said, I wish I would have worked more.
Mm.
Nobody. But what really, at the end of the day, what is it all about? Why do you do what you do? And, I have 5 things written down in a folder of like, who am I? Not, oh, I'm a mom, I'm a this, I'm a that. It's, I am, I'm a patient person. I'm an understanding person. And when you have these main goals defined, when situations arise, you can pull that out and look at it. Who am I? You're this. And if you have this roadmap of your core values and how you want to navigate life, you just automatically start to flow with what aligns to what your idea of who you are truly is.
There. Yes. And this process is actually talked about both in my membership and in my business course. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you join us. What was it like for you to work with me? What did you expect to get from coaching and what did you actually get?
Yeah. So I think working with you, what I loved about it was you created a very welcoming, non-judgmental, safe space to just blast what was going on in life. That's really what I wanted. I thought I was broken. I thought I need
Mhm.
to fix all of these things about me. And what I discovered that just because the thoughts arrive, and I think this is the truth, oh, I am anxious. I am this. There's a difference between the feelings, the thoughts, and the emotions. And I was able to really write that down and figure out, okay, what is what? Because it was all gray area. I thought feelings were truth and thoughts were truth. I think that it's so important now to get that critical thinking skill set out to people because a lot of these truths we think are true, they're just thoughts or emotion. I've realized how to search my physical body to figure
Mhm.
out where am I holding this? I didn't realize how much
Mhm.
was held in my stomach, and in my
Mhm.
intestines, and I've always had some stomach
Mhm.
issues. And wow, that's crazy. There's a lot of power in figuring out where do these things lie inside my body. Body does keep score, and it's pretty crazy what emotions can do to a physical body. I think that also really understanding that there is a control aspect that I have between event and response. Just because something happens does not negate response. I don't
Mhm.
have to react in a certain way. I can just tell somebody, you know what? I'm going to need to take some time to think about that. I can stew, I can journal, I can do whatever, but I truly can control how I respond to this. I don't have to let life
Mhm.
be around. So I think that from coaching and I've done counseling before, I've done all this stuff, but never did the counselors dive in to some of these behaviors and patterns that I had created. And so I'd come to you with what I thought was a problem. If we dissected, and it was not the problem, it was the byproduct of what the real underlying problem was. And just being able to do that now is so empowering and
Mhm.
it's so critical. And it's something that's universal: business, family, personal, relationship with your dog. It's
Mhm.
all universally exchangeable.
Yeah, it's so connected. And it's funny because people will say, well, tell me who you work with. And I'll say the neurodivergent community. Well, be more specific. Are you neurodivergent? I work with you. Do you have neurodivergent kids? I work with you. Do you have a neurodivergent spouse? I work with you. Well, are you a business coach or are you a life coach? Both.
Right.
Why? Because
It's all connected.
it's
It's
all
all
connected.
connected. And that's such a misconception. People think that it's one or the other. And I think until people fully understand that business, personal, friendships, all of that stuff, it all comes back to you and who you are as a person. So why not dive in and figure out, do the shadow work, figure out what's going on, what makes me feel shame, what brings joy, what traumas happened in the past. That was a hard thing for me to grasp. I was I poo-pooed, childhood traumas and all that junk. And, I was like, that's just a bunch of crap. And, hit me when I really started to dive into, just the agreements you make with yourself as a young child shapes how you deal with situations as an adult. And I
Mhm.
had to deal with some and work through, not just deal with, but actually do the work on a lot of traumas and call traumas for what they were. I did not want to do that because I did not want to be categorized as a victim in any way.
Mhm.
So I minimized a lot of stuff.
There's so many people in the neurodiverse community that experience big T's and little T's. It's almost like the frog that doesn't know how to jump out of the water. We experience them so young that we get kind of used to it. And then we develop whatever coping mechanism that looks like. And that coping mechanism really does create its own belief system and almost personality to it and defense mechanism, whatever that looks like, whether it's anxious avoidant or vigilant. Is there anything that you would really like to share with the neurodivergent community being such, number one, being a neurodivergent woman, number two, being a neurodivergent business owner, number three, being a partner, and number four, being a mompreneur?
I think combining all of those, I can probably give my insight for a universal answer to all of those areas. I think what this has done is made me see that it's the neurodivergence that change the world. Instead
Mhm.
of comparing my weaknesses to other people's strengths, I harness my strengths. I started to stop comparing those weaknesses because, again, you know, whether you have an opinion, good or bad, about people individually as people, the truth is the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musks, they're neurodivergent. You can't be
Mhm.
a typical minded person and think so abstract. And there is
Mhm.
so much creativity in neurodiversity that you just have to figure out how your brain works. I'm also dyslexic, so I have to read things multiple times. And I used to get so frustrated. Like, why does it take me so long to read these things? Now it's fine. I know, okay, I'm going to read it one way. I'm going to read it another way. And on the third read, I ask myself, do I fully understand what's going on here? If I don't, I read it fourth time. I take notes. I figure out, okay, what's this problem all about? You just have to learn to deal with the way your brain works. It doesn't mean you're defective. Doesn't mean you're broken. Don't compare your weaknesses to other people's strengths.
So, in a sense, you have really be able to accept all of yourself, including your neurodiversity, and completely own it and own who you are and really dive into your strengths and understand that you need support systems for your challenges. I absolutely love that. Is there anything else you want to say to the audience before we go?
I think that, just keep keep evolving. You don't have to measure it by how fast your progress is. Progress is
Mm.
progress, no matter how small, how quick, whatever. Just do it for you and realize that we're all on this earth to figure out what this life is all about and what does it mean for you and what is your purpose. And maybe your purpose is to just learn how to be and not do. Maybe your purpose is to change the world in some way, but we forget that we do change the world. Every
Mhm.
interaction that I have, and if I can help somebody see something, they're going to recognize it. They're going to change their kids, which are going to change their kids, which are, that's generations and thousands of people that are changed because of words that were said or ideas that were presented. I highly recommend to connect with you, Teresa. I think, you know, take a second and just focus on what it is you want to do in this life and start.
Last question, and then we're going to say goodbye. What value would you put on your journey since we met and began 4 years ago?
I mean, I don't think that there's any monetary value that can be put on that. Just from what I was able to get a grip on with thoughts and actions has made me pretty successful, from a monetary standpoint and just overall how I live my life, because success
Mhm.
can be defined in many different ways. And I think that if you truly want to change your life, your financial situation, your emotional state of mind, your overall thought processes, coaching is a must. There's no book you're going to read that's going to give you the answers. It can help jog your thoughts and get you to think about some stuff, but it's not going to help you dig in and really work on areas that need to be tackled.
Mhm. Yeah, because you can read a book, but everybody's experience is completely different. And that's why working with somebody to help you work through your own experience is so important. Marilyn, thank you so much for joining us today. I so very appreciate all of your insight and your words and your wisdom that you have given everyone. Thank you.
You are welcome. And likewise back to you. Everything that you just thanked before, I thank you back 100 times.
The NeuroTribe, I love you all. Thank you so much. Have a good day.